Don't buy Crosley Cruiser record players.
Suitcase-style turntables!
These record players are
They'll play
trash,
Dark Side
and
of
you
the Moon
should
5
definitely
times, and then the
avoid
grooves
them.
will
All
chew
anyone
it
is
up.
marketed
This is a
as
stupid hobby.
portable,
Why did I
then
get
that
into
model is crap.
When I heard these words for the first time, I was quite terrified. I had just received a Victrola Journey, my first ever record player, for Christmas, and to hear that this gift was more of a Christmas curse really put me off. It really felt like the hobby I wanted to get into was just impossible to do so without some crazy expensive record player. But what about these suitcase record players actually made them bad? First of all, the player did not cover the entire record. This isn't much of a big deal, but if the cover falls down, you get the idea. Next, this record player has a built-in speaker system. This is an issue because the vibrations from the speaker system can travel up into the record and stylus, causing interference. It also keeps people from buying higher quality stereo systems. Finally, there was no dust cover. You could close the lid on 45s to keep dust out, but that's not exactly doable for 33s. Dust covers are important because the record generates a lot of static when it's being played, and any amount of dust on the record can cause a decent amount of damage. So for a while, I was stuck. Until I got this. It's an Emerson M2336, produced in the late 80s to early 90s. My mom was helping someone move when they found it sitting in a corner. The owner said they didn't want it, so my mom brought it to me. Thank you, Mom. It still had this quote-unquote cheap stylus that beginner record players have. I'll explain more about that later on. But it had a dust cover and required external speakers, and, not to mention, it had a cassette player and a radio. It was perfect, except for that stylus. My initial plan was to replace the stylus and cartridge with something higher quality, and solder in a new component to help with that. How hard and how expensive could it possibly be? Oh. So that wasn't gonna work. Even if I modified it correctly, one commenter told me it was kinda like putting lipstick on a pig. Impractical. So instead, I did a little bit of research. I'll try to summarize it as best as I can, but this topic has been debated by the audiophile community for a very long time. This part of the record player is called the cartridge, not the needle, not the stylus, that's down here. Now that we're on the same page, there are two main types of cartridges used by the majority of the community: ceramic and moving magnet. Ceramic cartridges, with the infamous red stylus attached, are found on cheaper entry-level turntables. They have a higher tracking force, meaning more force on the record, creating a strong output signal that can be connected directly to the unit's sound system. Moving magnet cartridges have a higher sensitivity, and therefore a fuller sound when compared to the ceramic. Additionally, they have a lighter tracking force. The big ticket with moving magnet is that its signal is much weaker than the ceramic, requiring a component called a phonopreamp to amplify the signal before sending it to the unit's sound output. This is the component I wanted to solder into my M2336, but I don't really know how to solder, and again, it's pretty expensive. The big reason why audiophiles with more expensive turntables will call cheaper ones trash is because this high tracking force that's part of ceramic cartridges can quote-unquote chew the record. I'm not going to deny the fact that this is true with a dirty record and a dull stylus, which, by the way, the cheap red ones, they wear out really quickly. But I kind of doubt the fact that ceramic cartridges in general damage records, and I have this video by V Westlife to prove it. In this video, he tests the theory by taking 3 identical records, playing them 50 times each on 3 different record players, one of which was ceramic. Let me show you what the results were. Zero noticeable difference. The last player listed was supposedly going to deal the most damage, by the way. It's important to note that this experiment was designed to measure the immediate damage on a vinyl record, not the long-term damage, which will probably be prevalent under ceramic cartridges. In the end though, the difference really boils down to how often you play the record. So with the theory debunked, the only trade-off remaining between the 2 cartridge types was sound quality, and it made perfect sense. You pay more, you get better sound quality, and vice versa. What really damages any record, regardless of turntable, is maintenance. Keeping dust off the vinyl, especially when playing, is crucial to maintain good sound. Not to mention handling and storage, of course. And like I mentioned earlier, keeping the stylus sharp and replacing it every time it gets close to wearing out. So technically my Victrola was okay to use, but I'm not exactly happy with it. There are those issues I mentioned earlier, and the Emerson of course has its own issues, a couple of which you can clearly see. And here was the biggest problem. The record player was emitting this high-pitched screeching sound every time I plugged it in. Funnily enough, when I posted this issue online, the same commenter stated that this was called function switch crosstalk bleedover. Essentially it means that this unit's switches are oxidized or dirty. It could also mean that the capacitors inside the unit are potentially failing. Before we can confirm this, I decided to simply take the unit apart and clean the contacts only to see if that was the only issue. Oh, I got a bigger one, and this one actually reaches. How do I... Got it. I have to be careful not to strip these screws. They look old already. They're already stripped. This one is a little bit more cooperative. Alrighty, last one. Listen to that. So let's see what's under here. Okay, big reveal. Ooh, take a look at that dust. I'll clean that off later. Jeez, you can tell that this is 80s tech. Here's the motor that spins the turntable. I think that's the motor that spins one of the cassette players, if not both. Looks like both. I'm not even gonna attempt to understand what's going on here, but we just need to get these contacts clean. I was told you need to spin this thing back and forth a couple times to get it all nice and clean. Wow, okay. Okay, while I'm at it, I'm also gonna put just a tiny bit of liquid on these things, just in case it's a contact between the speaker. Okay, let's see if that did anything. Okay, I should probably clean the inside of this before I put it back on. Look at that. Okay, let's put this sucker back on. There we go. Okay, for some reason the screw that goes in the center hole is like slightly shorter than the rest, so we're gonna just slide that in first and then drop all the others in. Okay, this is the moment of truth. Did all of that actually do anything? Let's find out, okay? I don't hear nothing. Okay, there's a tiny bit, but much less than before. And definitely sounds different. It is much quieter, so we just gotta keep cleaning it. Okay, I took off the back again. I think I'm just gonna start by spraying the parts I know are giving issues. Same on the contact. And if there's any professionals out there, I'd like to apologize in advance for what I'm doing. Here's a really dumb idea. I'm going to plug this thing in while it's still open. I'm not going to touch anything because I know it's going to short out, but I just want to see if the left speaker, which I have plugged in here, will continue like screaming at me. Nope, it's still mad at me. Yep, still very much mad at me. More cleaning. But every time I've cleaned it, the screaming has gone down, which is good. Just a little bit. Just a little drink. We just gotta keep doing this. Yay! I've been doing this for I don't know how long. Just twiddling it. Twiddling. I want to try something. So if you notice, I'm having it on turntable mode right now. And you can hear the sound from, it's called bleed over. Now, if I turn it down a lot and switch it to tape, it's even louder. It's like crazy loud. So I'm going to switch it to phono again, turn up the volume, and see if maybe I can hear the sound from a cassette tape in the phono mode. So here we have some Byzantine Orthodox chanting. I don't have any other cassettes at the moment, so this will have to do. Let's just play it and see what happens. Yeah, I hear the chanting. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Mostly it's just like if I turn on high-speed dubbing. I also need to fix whatever sound is going on here. Okay, after a lot of messing around, I found out that the main issue resides in this component, the one with the numbers on it. I have no idea how it works or what it's used for, but the sound is mostly gone. This is on tape mode. And if you remember, beforehand it was completely noisy. Now we have normal static. So problem solved. Okay, so when I said solving that problem was the hardest part of this project, that was a lie. I thought it would be much easier to take the keys off the front of the player, but as it turns out, someone really did not want me doing that. In the end, I had to take off one of the mounts for the missing key in order to finally twist loose the full key. And yeah, it was definitely not going to come off. I could print the entire thing out of PLA, but there is one part that requires a press fit, and PLA is not very good at not being brittle. So as much as I didn't want to do this, I'm going to have to print a cap that will simply be glued on to these keyless mounts. To do that, I measured and then modeled the key itself. Then I modeled the mount, a basic rough version of it, and subtracted that from the key. I made sure to leave a little extra room so that it could fit over without any sort of interference. Then I sent it over to the printer and let it print. The print came out looking pretty good. So after hitting it with some primer, it was time to paint this thing black. To do that, I'd be using this airbrush. Despite not actually knowing how to use one, I was able to get it to spray paint. Now in hindsight, I realized I was not using enough pressure, but I still managed to get a pretty consistent coat on it. And when I popped it into its place on the record player, I realized that because of printing tolerances and whatnot, it would actually fit pretty perfectly, so I ended up not using glue. Now all I needed to do was rinse and repeat the process for the second cap and pop it into place as well. And there you have it. No more missing keys. I will admit the finish is not perfect, in fact it's far from perfect, but it definitely beats not having a key at all. So, now that that's out of the way, it's time to give this sucker a clean. I really hope that's not from the plastic itself. Does anyone know what fester is? Do I really have to take this off, man? This one's really badly stuck on there. I'm just gonna keep it on. A little homage to the original owner. Turns out this paint can actually be cleaned up with alcohol. Man, alcohol really does solve all your problems. I managed to get most of the gunk off, but just because this thing's old, some of it had to stay behind. But I still managed to take a old, noisy, and very cruddy record player and turn it into something a little bit more presentable. But the question still stands about record players in general, and what a beginner should look for when trying to get a new record player. So here is my final verdict based on my research. If you're not really interested in high sound quality, maybe you're buying cheap records from the thrift store and listening to them just because they're records, then by all means, just stick with the Crosley or the Victrola or any suitcase style record player. They're cheap, they're easy to use, and they're fun. Besides, if you're buying records from the thrift store for cheap, there's a good chance they're never gonna have good sound anyway. If you're starting to get a little bit more interested in the hobby, maybe you're buying newer records or albums you actually recognize, then I'd recommend upgrading to something slightly better, like my Emerson. You definitely want to invest in at least a cheap pair of speakers so that you can better hear any stereo sound. Overall, you really should not be paying any more than $100 when it comes to these record players. Finally, if you're listening to records as much as someone would Spotify, and you're starting to collect more expensive, limited edition, rare, or super high quality records, you definitely want to invest in a record player with moving magnet cartridges. You get much better sound quality, and if you're still stingy about it, the records will last a little bit longer with moving magnet. But even then, don't spend all this money on an overly expensive record player when there are much cheaper alternatives to go for. For instance, if you know you're never going to get too picky about sound, but you still want good quality, buy an Audio-Technica LP60X. They're barely $200, and they give you a lot of good sound quality, although if you really want to upgrade, the cartridge might be an issue. If I had any recommendation, buy something that's upgradable, so that the more picky you get, the more you can add to make it sound better. But in the end, regardless of what type of record player you have, from the $10 battery operated ones you can buy on Temu, to the really expensive record players, just remember, vinyl is meant to be played. It's not meant to sit on a shelf collecting dust. Have fun. Thanks all for watching. Let me know if there's any more upgrades I should do with this record player. But for now, I'll see you later.